Morris, an 82-year-old man, went to his doctor for a routine checkup. A few days later, the doctor spotted Morris strolling down the street, arm in arm with a stunning young woman, grinning from ear to ear. A couple of days after that, the doctor ran into him again and said, "Morris, you're looking great. Seems like you're really thriving." Morris winked and said, "Just following your advice, Doc. Get a hot mama and be cheerful." The doctor shook his head. "Morris, I said you've got a heart murmur. Be careful." A teacher asks a student, "What kind of woman do you want to marry when you're grown up?" The kid replies, "A woman like the moon." The teacher smiles and says, "Oh, that's lovely. You must want someone beautiful and radiant like the moon." The kid grins and says, "No, I want her to only show up at night and disappear by morning." Dan married a woman who had an identical twin sister. Less than a year into the marriage, he found himself standing in court, filing for divorce. The judge asked him, "Please explain to the court why you are seeking a divorce." Dan sighed and replied, "Well, Your Honor, my sister-in-law visits us often, and since she and my wife look exactly alike, there were times I accidentally made love to her instead of my wife." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Surely, there must be some way to tell them apart?" Dan nodded emphatically. "Oh, there's a difference, Your Honor. That's exactly why I want the divorce." An old man wakes up in the middle of the night, and to his amazement, realizes something. His little buddy is standing tall for the first time in years. Excited, he nudges his wife awake. "Look at this. What do you think we should do with it?" he asks proudly. His wife, barely opening one eye, groans and says, "Well, since all the wrinkles are finally gone, might be a good time to wash it." The great white doctor comes to an impoverished African village where he sees several young mothers either pregnant or with several small kids in tow, all showing signs of malnourishment. On inquiry through an interpreter, he learned that the chief was a rather amorous character, and all the ladies and children belonged to him. So he sent a large box of condoms to the chief with instructions to always use it. A year later, he returns to the same village only to find the chief's wives still pregnant, or with newborn children. Annoyed, he sends for the chief and, through the interpreter, demands an explanation. The interpreter listens to the stammering chief and explains, "But doctor, he swears he always wore the condom." "Then how the heck did this happen?" The interpreter questions the chief, listens, and replies, "He says after 3 days he desperately needed to pee, and so he made a small hole at the tip." A couple decides they need a guard dog. The husband goes to a pet store and tells the employee, "I need a tough guard dog to protect our home." The employee grins and says, "I've got just the one for you." Then she brings out a chihuahua. The guy looks confused. "A chihuahua? I need a real guard dog, not a tiny barking bean." The employee smirks. "Oh, but this isn't just any chihuahua. This is an attack chihuahua." She points to a chair. "Attack chihuahua, chair!" Boom! The tiny dog shreds the chair to splinters in seconds. The guy's jaw drops. "Whoa! That's insane! But I still don't know." The employee points at a table. "Attack chihuahua, table!" Bam! The table is obliterated. The guy is sold. "Okay, I'm taking him." He brings the dog home, proud of his new guard dog. But his wife? Not so impressed. "Are you serious? You bought a chihuahua?" she yells. He grins. "But honey, this isn't just any chihuahua. This is an attack chihuahua." She rolls her eyes. "Attack chihuahua, my ass!" And that's the last thing she remembers before the chihuahua attacked. At the supermarket, a woman notices an elderly man pushing a cart while his 3-year-old grandson throws an absolute tantrum. The child screeches for candy, cookies, anything within reach. Through it all, Grandpa remains composed, murmuring in a calm voice, "It's okay, Oliver, we're almost done. Just a little longer, buddy. The little boy wails louder, knocking cereal boxes off the shelves. Grandpa sighs but gently says, "Hang in there, Oliver. Just a few more minutes, my boy." At the checkout, the meltdown intensifies. Oliver hurls a bag of marshmallows at the cashier. But Grandpa, unfazed, quietly reassures, "Deep breaths, Oliver. We'll be home soon. Stay calm, buddy." Impressed, the woman follows them outside. As the man loads groceries into his car, she approaches with admiration. "Sir, I just have to say, you have the patience of a saint. I don't know how you kept so calm with little Oliver causing chaos in there." Grandpa chuckles. "Oh, Oliver? That little rascal's name is Jake. I'm Oliver." For best friends, Lisa, Karen, Beth, and Susan have shared the same birthday for decades. Every year, they celebrate together, and their choice of restaurant always reflects their stage in life. For their 40th birthday, they choose the Sunset Bistro because the bartenders are flirty, the cocktails are strong, and the lighting is forgiving. For their 50th birthday, they return to the Sunset Bistro because the menu has great seafood, and they've finally developed a taste for fine wine. For their 60th birthday, they go back to the Sunset Bistro because it's quiet, has comfortable chairs, and offers early dinner specials. For their 70th birthday, they visit the Sunset Bistro because the parking is easy, and they can actually hear each other talk. For their 80th birthday, they excitedly book a table at the Sunset Bistro, because it sounds like a place they've never been before. After the Great Britain Beer Festival in London, all the brewery presidents decided to grab a drink together. The president of Corona sits down and says, "Senior, I'll have the finest beer in the world, a Corona." The bartender dusts off a bottle from the shelf and hands it to him. The Budweiser president follows, saying, "I'll take the king of beers, a Budweiser." The bartender serves him one. The Coors president nods and says, "Give me the only beer brewed with pure Rocky Mountain spring water, a Coors." He gets his drink. Then the Guinness president sits down and casually says, "I'll have a Coke." The bartender raises an eyebrow but hands him the soda. The other brewery presidents turn to him, confused. "Why aren't you drinking a Guinness?" they ask. He smirks and replies, "Well, I figured if you guys aren't drinking beer, I won't either." 3 boys are hanging out in the schoolyard, boasting about their dads. The first boy says, "My dad scribbles a few words on a piece of paper, calls it a poem, and they pay him $50. The second boy smirks and replies, "That's nothing. My dad writes a few lines on paper, calls it a song, and they hand him $100. The third boy grins and says, "Oh, I've got you both beat. My dad jots down a few words, calls it a sermon, and it takes 8 people just to collect all the money." A salesman was driving home through northern Arizona when he spotted a Navajo man hitchhiking on the side of the road. Since the long drive had been dull, he decided to pick him up. The Navajo man climbed in, and they made small talk as they cruised down the highway. After a while, the hitchhiker's eyes flickered toward a brown paper bag resting on the seat between them. Noticing his curiosity, the salesman chuckled. "If you're wondering what's in the bag, it's a bottle of wine. Got it from my wife." The Navajo man nodded thoughtfully, sat in silence for a moment, then said, "Good trade." 2 spinster sisters, Gladys and Betty, were chatting one Friday night. Suddenly, Gladys announced, "Betty, I'm tired of this boring life. I'm going out tonight to shake things up." Betty, ever the cautious one, replied, "Fine, but you'd better be back by 10, or I'll worry." 10 o'clock passed. Then 11. Midnight. Finally, just after 1 a.m., the front door burst open, and in rushed Gladys, heading straight to the bathroom. Concerned, Betty knocked on the door. "Gladys, are you okay in there?" No response. So Betty peeked inside to find Gladys sitting with a perplexed look on her face. "Gladys!" Betty gasped. "What's going on?" Still puzzled, Gladys replied, "Betty, let's just say it was an interesting night, and I think I need to rethink my life choices." The husband was drifting off to sleep when his wife, feeling romantic, nudged him gently. "You used to hold my hand when we were dating," she said softly. Sighing, he reached out, held her hand briefly, then turned back over. Moments later, she whispered, "You used to kiss me too." Grumbling, he leaned over, gave her a quick kiss, and closed his eyes again. Not long after, she teased, "And you used to nibble my neck." With an exasperated groan, he threw off the covers and got up. "Where are you going?" she asked, puzzled. "To find my dentures," he shot back. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, there were two brothers, ages 8 and 10, known for their endless mischief. If something went wrong, missing mail, toppled trash cans, mysteriously relocated garden gnomes, you could bet they had something to do with it. Their exhausted parents had tried everything, but nothing worked. Finally, their mother heard about a local priest known for straightening out troublemakers. Desperate, she convinced her husband they should take the boys to see him. The priest agreed but insisted on seeing the younger boy first, alone. So, the 8-year-old was sent to the church. He sat across from the priest's massive wooden desk as the priest leaned in and fixed him with a serious stare. After a long silence, the priest pointed at him and asked, "Where is God?" The boy blinked. He glanced under the desk. He checked the corners of the room. He looked at the ceiling. But he said nothing. The priest, louder this time, repeated, "Where is God?" The boy squirmed in his chair but still stayed silent. Now, the priest leaned all the way forward, eyes locked onto the boy, and thundered, "Where is God?" That was it. The boy bolted from his seat, ran out of the church, all the way home, and straight into the house. He grabbed his older brother, dragged him upstairs, and pulled him into their usual hideout, the closet. Gasping for breath, he whispered, "We are in big trouble." His older brother frowned. "What do you mean?" The younger one gulped and said, "God is missing, and they think we did it." Took the family out to eat at Applebee's. The parking lot was packed, but I spotted a guy heading to his car, so I waited about 10 minutes for him to pull out. Just as he left, a car full of young girls swooped in and stole my spot. You know the type. I rolled down my window and told them I'd been waiting for that space. The driver just smirked and said, "Too bad. Your name wasn't on it." Livid but keeping my cool, I found another spot, parked, and went inside to eat. While we enjoyed our meal, I noticed the girls at the bar, taking shots and getting completely wasted. That's when inspiration struck. When we finished, I slipped our waiter a $20 and gave him a simple task: wait 10 minutes after we leave, then go up to the girls and tell them someone called, saying their car just got keyed. Now let me be clear, I did not key their car. About an hour later, I called the waiter to see how it went. He could barely talk from laughing. Apparently, the girls lost their minds, screaming, freaking out, even calling the cops. Here's where it gets even better. The police arrived, checked the car, and found 0 damage. But they did notice something else. The girls were too wasted to drive. The cops left, circled the lot, and waited. Sure enough, not long after, the girls stumbled out, got in the car, and started the engine. Boom! Parking lot lit up in blue lights. DUI arrests all around. I didn't hear about the bonus until a week later when I went back for a beer. The same waiter saw me, still laughing about it, and filled me in on what happened. I handed him another $20. Best $40 I ever spent, and I kept some drunk drivers off the road. A journalist goes to a poor remote village for a documentary. He saw an old man and asked him to narrate a typical happy story of his village. The old man smiled and began. "One day, a long time ago, my goat got lost in the mountains. As is our tradition, all the men of the village gathered to drink vodka first and then looked for the goat. When we finally found her, as is our tradition, we all drank some more vodka and all the men in the village each got their turn to mate with the goat. We had so much fun that day." The journalist realized that he couldn't publish such a story, so he asked the old man if he had another happy story. The old man smiled again and started all over again. "Once, my neighbor's wife got lost in the mountains. As per our tradition, all of the village's men gathered to drink vodka and then went to look for her. As is our tradition, When we finally found her, all the men in the village got their turn to mate with the neighbor's wife. We had great fun that day." The journalist couldn't publish that story either, and therefore asked, "Don't you have a story that is less happy? Something, sadder?" The old man's smile faded. His eyes welled up. In a sad, soft voice he began. "One day I got lost in the mountains. A husband and wife walk into an adoption agency looking to adopt a child. They're impeccably dressed, well-spoken, and the social workers are impressed by their polished appearance. However, when asked about their profession, the couple calmly replies, 'We run a circus.' The social worker's eyebrows shoot up. A circus? With animals? Constantly on the move? That didn't sound like the most stable environment for a child. Their doubts began to creep in about the couple's suitability as parents. Undeterred, the couple pulls out photos of their 55-foot motorhome, which is pristine, well-maintained, and even features a large, spotless nursery. The social workers are relieved, but a new question arises about the child's education. The husband smiles and assures them, "We've arranged for a full-time tutor to cover all the regular subjects, plus French, Mandarin, and computer skills." While the social workers are impressed, they still have reservations about a child being raised in a circus. The wife steps in confidently, saying, "Our nanny is a certified expert in pediatric care, child welfare, proper nutrition, and exercise, everything a child could need." The social workers, now somewhat reassured, ask, "So, what age range are you looking to adopt?" Without missing a beat, the husband replies, "It doesn't matter, as long as they fit in a canon." A high-profile, big-ego attorney from the city was representing the railroad in a case filed by an old rancher. The rancher's prized bull had gone missing, and the rancher claimed that the noise from the train had scared the bull off. The rancher was suing the railroad for what he believed the bull was worth. When they arrived at the courthouse, the slick railroad lawyer saw an opportunity to settle and approached the old rancher before the trial began. After some quick talking, the old rancher agreed to settle for half of what he had been asking. Once the release was signed, the lawyer, feeling smug, couldn't resist bragging. "Well, I sure pulled one over on you. I never could have won this case. The engineer was asleep, and the fireman was in the caboose when the train went through. I didn't have a single witness to put on the stand. I was bluffing." The old rancher just yawned and replied, "Well, I'll tell you, Slick. I was worried about losing the case too. That old bull came home this morning." A man hurriedly rushes his limp dog to the vet. After examining the dog, the vet sadly declares it dead. The man, still frantic, demands a second opinion. The vet heads to the back room and returns with a cat. The cat sniffs the dog's body, then meows. The vet says, "I'm sorry, but the cat also thinks your dog is dead." The man, still not convinced, insists on another opinion. The vet brings in a black Labrador. The dog sniffs the body and barks. The vet says, "I'm sorry, but the lab also thinks your dog is dead." Reluctantly, the man agrees to accept the news and asks, "How much do I owe you?" The vet responds, $6.50. $6.50 to tell me my dog is dead? The man exclaims in shock. "Well," the vet says, "I only charged you $50 for my initial diagnosis. The extra $600 is for the CAT scan and lab tests. I bet you don't know what day it is." The wife teased as her husband headed out the door. Caught off guard but quick on his feet, he replied, "Of course I do, my love. How could I forget?" and hurried off to catch his bus. At 10 a.m., the doorbell rang, and a box of long-stemmed red roses was delivered. At 1 p.m., a 2-pound box of her favorite chocolates arrived. By 3 p.m., a boutique sent over a stunning designer dress. The wife could hardly contain her excitement as she waited for her husband to return. When he walked in, he was feeling quite proud of himself. She greeted him with a beaming smile, saying, "First the flowers, then the chocolates, and then the dress. This has been the best Groundhog Day ever." Betty, a sweet little old lady with a sunny disposition, had been living a contented life, except for one small issue that recently emerged. One day, she visited her doctor and said, "Doctor, I have a bit of a gas problem. It doesn't bother me much, though. My farts are always silent and don't smell at all." The doctor raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Is that so?" Betty nodded earnestly. "Absolutely. In fact, I've probably farted about 20 times since I've been sitting here, and you didn't even notice because they're silent and odorless." The doctor, suppressing a smile, replied, "I see. Here, take these pills and come back next week." Betty followed the instructions faithfully, but over the next few days, she noticed an alarming change. When she returned to the doctor, she was visibly upset. "Doctor," she exclaimed, "I don't know what was in those pills, but now my farts, though still silent, smell absolutely horrible." The doctor smiled and said, "Excellent. Now that we've cleared up your sinuses, let's work on your hearing." Thomas, at 32, was still single. One day, a friend asked him, "Why aren't you married? Haven't you found a woman who could make a good wife?" Thomas sighed and replied, "Well, I've found many women I wanted to marry, but every time I bring them home to meet my parents, my mother doesn't approve." His friend thought for a moment and said, "I've got the perfect solution. Just find someone who's exactly like your mother." A few months later, they bumped into each other again, and the friend eagerly asked, "Did you find the right girl? Did your mother like her?" Thomas frowned and replied, "Yes, I found the perfect girl. She was just like my mother." "You were right, my mother liked her very much." His friend, relieved, asked, "Then what's the problem?" Thomas replied with a deep sigh, "My father doesn't like her." An elderly couple was celebrating their 60th anniversary. Yes, 60 years of wedded bliss. They had been childhood sweethearts and decided to retire back in their old neighborhood, reliving the glory days. One afternoon, they strolled hand in hand to their old school, and lo and behold, the door was open. They couldn't resist sneaking inside. They found the very desk they'd shared all those years ago, and sure enough, Jerry had carved, "I love you, Sally," into it. He was quite the romantic, apparently. Feeling nostalgic, they wandered back home, but something unusual happened. A bag of money literally fell out of an armored car, landing right at their feet. It was like the universe was just handing them a little anniversary gift. Sally, being the quick thinker she is, scooped it up. Unsure what to do next, they decided to take it home. Inside the bag? A cool $50,000. Jerry, always the law-abiding citizen, said, "We've got to give it back." Sally, on the other hand, with a mischievous grin, said, "Finders keepers." She tucked the money back into the bag and hid it in their attic. The next day, 2 police officers showed up in the neighborhood, knocking on doors. "Excuse me, did either of you happen to find a bag that fell out of an armored car yesterday?" Sally, ever the quick thinker, said, "Nope, didn't see a thing." Jerry, without missing a beat, pointed at her and said, "She's lying. It's in the attic." Sally shot back, "Don't believe him, he's getting senile." The officers exchanged glances, clearly unsure of who to believe. They turned to Jerry and asked, "Okay, tell us the story from the beginning." Jerry, looking serious, said, "Well, when Sally and I were walking home from school yesterday." The first officer turned to his partner and whispered, "We're out of here." Clearly, some cases are best left unsolved.